I want alimony. The courtroom was silent. The judge adjusted her glasses and glanced at the man standing before her. Bass, now in his 60s, looked tired but determined. He had come to demand financial support from the woman he had abandoned years ago. Across the room, Rita sat, her back straight, her eyes steady. She had worked 3 jobs, raised 2 children, and fought for her life while Bass spent years doing nothing. Now, he wanted her money. But this story didn't start here. It started over 2 decades ago, when Bass had a brilliant idea. The return of Bass. Bass was 50 when he decided he was done pretending to hustle in America. He had nothing to show for his years abroad. No house. No business. Nothing but wasted time and empty excuses. His mates had built empires, but Bass had lived on lies. So, he came up with a plan. He would go to Nigeria, find a hardworking woman, marry her, and bring her back to America. She would work, and he would enjoy her labor. That was how he found Rita. She was 26, a nurse from Enugu. Young, hopeful, full of dreams of a better future. She had always wanted to live abroad, believing America was a land of opportunities. When Bass found her, he knew exactly what to say. He promised her a good life, a bright future, and endless support. He painted himself as a successful man, someone who just needed a good wife to complete his life. Rita believed him. They married quickly. It was a small wedding, rushed and simple. Within months, he processed her papers, and soon, she was on a plane to America, ready to start her new life. Reality hit fast. The moment Rita arrived, Bass showed his true self. He had no job, no money, and no plans to change. But he expected her to work. She got a nursing job immediately, thinking they were building a life together. She handed him her paycheck every 2 weeks, trusting him as the head of the home. At first, she didn't see anything wrong with it. She was raised to be a supportive wife. But when she needed money for her hair or nails, Bass would say, "There's no money for that." Yet, he always had money for his own pleasures. The years passed. Rita worked long shifts while Bass sat at home, doing nothing. She convinced herself he would change. She kept believing. Then came another blow. Bass had known all along that he couldn't have children. His past lifestyle had left him infertile, but he never told Rita. When she brought up having kids, he acted like they just needed more time. Eventually, after years of trying, Rita suggested IVF. She paid for everything, went through the painful process, and by the grace of God, it worked. She gave birth to twins. Bass barely reacted. Instead of being grateful, instead of being a supportive father, he continued wasting money. Worse, he was spending Rita's hard-earned money on other women, the same women he had been with before she arrived in America. He didn't even try to hide it. Rita endured. She believed in marriage. She kept hoping, praying, sacrificing. Then, one day, Bass disappeared. He left without a word. No phone calls, no notes, nothing. Weeks later, she received the shock of her life. A man knocked on her door and handed her a thick envelope. Divorce papers. Bass had returned to Nigeria, married another woman, and filed for divorce, without even telling Rita. But that wasn't the worst part. In the divorce settlement, Bass demanded alimony, financial support from Rita. He claimed he was unemployed and that since she was the breadwinner during the marriage, she should continue supporting him even after the divorce. At that moment, Rita realized she had given everything to a man who never cared. She had nothing in her name. No bank account of her own. No savings. Just 2 babies under 2 years old and a job that drained her every day. Yet, Base believed she still owed him. Rita sat on the floor of her small apartment, staring at the divorce papers. Her babies lay sleeping in their crib, unaware that their world had just shifted. Her hands trembled as she flipped through the pages. Base wanted money. Money from the woman he abandoned. Money from the woman who had worked herself to the bone for years. Money from the mother of his children, who had no savings, no security, and no idea how she would survive. She wiped her face. She had cried enough. That night, as exhaustion pulled at her body, Rita made a decision. She would fight. The next morning, she called a lawyer. The lawyer didn't sugarcoat anything. Legally, he has the right to ask for alimony. But that doesn't mean he'll get it. You need to start protecting yourself now. Open a bank account in your name. Learn how to drive. Secure your finances. Rita had never handled money before. She had trusted Base with everything. Now, she had to start from zero. She took action. She opened a bank account. She got a second job. She signed up for driving school. She stopped handing over her paycheck to anyone but herself. For the first time since arriving in America, Rita took control. But Base wasn't done with her. Base returned to the US months later, acting like nothing had happened. He wasn't there to see the kids. He wasn't there to apologize. He was there for the money. He filed for alimony in court, arguing that Rita owed him financial support because she had been the primary breadwinner. He claimed he was unemployable and needed her paycheck to survive. Rita fought back. For 10 years, they battled in court. 10 years of hearings, documents, stress, and legal fees. 10 years of Base sitting in the courtroom, pretending to be the victim while Rita worked double shifts, raised 2 kids, and barely slept. 10 years of him doing everything possible to drain her dry. But Rita refused to give up. She brought evidence. She showed the judge how Base had been living off her income while refusing to work. She proved he had abandoned her and the children. She exposed his secret life, how he had remarried multiple times since leaving her. She even brought her parents from Nigeria to help care for the kids so she could focus on survival. The battle was brutal. Base used every trick in the book. He lied. He manipulated. He dragged the case out, hoping Rita would break. But she didn't. One day in court, Base made a mistake. His lawyer argued that he had no source of income and had been completely dependent on Rita for survival. But just weeks earlier, Base had posted pictures online, posing with another new wife in Nigeria, throwing a lavish party. He had money. He was just too lazy to work. Rita's lawyer presented the evidence. The judge had seen enough. She ruled in Rita's favor. Base would get nothing. No alimony. No support. No handouts. After a decade of fighting, Rita was finally free. But the damage had already been done. She had spent 10 years working non-stop, raising 2 children alone, while Base moved from woman to woman, trying to live off them. Her children, now teenagers, had grown up watching their mother struggle. They had seen her cry at night, seen her go to work even when she was sick, seen her push through exhaustion. They had also seen Base for who he truly was. And they wanted nothing to do with him. Life caught up with Base. After divorcing Rita, he married again. And again. And again. Each marriage lasted a few years before ending the same way, him draining his new wife's resources until she left. By the time he reached his 70s, Base had nothing. No wife, No money. No family. His children, now adults, refused to see him. They had watched their mother fight, suffer, and sacrifice for them while he had done nothing. They wanted no part of him. But Base never changed. Even in his old age, he still looked for the next woman to take care of him. The next person to use. The next free ride. Rita, on the other hand, thrived. With the court battle behind her, she found happiness. She met a man, a good, hardworking man who loved her, respected her, and treated her the way she had always deserved. She had love, stability, and peace. She had won. And Base. He had lost everything. For the first time in decades, Rita could breathe. The courtroom battles were over. The sleepless nights worrying about Base's next move were gone. The fear of losing everything had disappeared. But the scars remained. She had spent 10 years fighting a man who never loved her. 10 years working 3 jobs, barely living, just surviving. 10 years raising 2 children alone. She looked in the mirror and barely recognized herself. Her face had aged faster than it should have. She had dark circles under her eyes. She had given everything to keep her children afloat while Base had lived like a parasite, draining her. Now, she was free. But what next? Rita had spent her entire marriage sacrificing for someone else. She had never prioritized herself. Now, she had to learn how. She started small. She cut her work hours. She had worked multiple jobs for so long that she had forgotten what rest felt like. She allowed herself to breathe. She went back to school, getting advanced nursing certifications that gave her more career options. She traveled. She had spent years locked in the cycle of survival, but now, she explored the world, something she had never imagined before. She laughed again. And then, love found her. She met Michael at a community event. He wasn't like Base. He was a hardworking, kind, and patient man. He listened when she spoke. He respected her work. He admired her strength. Most of all, he didn't see her as someone to use, he saw her as someone to cherish. At first, she was cautious. After years of betrayal, trusting a man felt impossible. But Chucks was patient. He didn't rush her. He didn't push. He simply showed up, day after day, proving that love didn't have to come with suffering. Her children loved him. And when he asked her to marry him, she didn't hesitate. This time, she wasn't marrying out of desperation or blind faith. She wasn't looking for a way out. She was already whole. Chucks was simply a bonus. And for the first time in her life, Rita was truly, completely happy. Base's life had become a cycle of failure. After Rita, he remarried, thinking he had found another woman to take care of him. But that marriage ended just like the others. Then another. And another. By the time he was in his 70s, he had nothing left. No stable home. No savings. No wife willing to tolerate him. Worst of all, his children, Rita's children, wanted nothing to do with him. He tried reaching out. He sent messages, made phone calls, even showed up at their college graduation uninvited. But his son and daughter didn't even look at him. He wasn't their father. Rita had been their father and mother. She had been the one who stayed, who walked, who sacrificed. Base had been nothing but a ghost. And now, in his old age, he was alone. One day, years later, Base and Rita crossed paths again. It happened in a grocery store. Rita, now in her 50s, looked radiant. She was happily married, financially stable, and at peace. She was everything Base had never been. Base, on the other hand, was a shadow of his former self. His face was sunken, his clothes worn out. He looked tired, defeated, empty. He approached her. "Rita," he said, forcing a smile. "Long time." She paused, looking at him, not with anger, not with hate, but with pity. She had won. Not because she wanted revenge. Not because she wanted to see him suffer. But because, in the end, life had given him exactly what he deserved. Base had spent his life using people, lying, and running from responsibility. He had taken advantage of a good woman, destroyed a home, and still believed he was the victim. Now, he was paying the price. Rita didn't say much. She simply nodded, turned around, and walked away, leaving Base standing there, realizing that he had lost the only good thing that had ever happened to him. Rita's children grew up strong, independent, and determined never to repeat their father's mistakes. They had seen what their mother endured. They had witnessed what true resilience looked like. They honored her sacrifices, making something of their lives, not for Base, but for her. And Rita? She lived the rest of her life surrounded by love, peace, and everything she had worked for. While Base? He faded into obscurity. Because in the end, karma never forgets. Years passed. Rita continued to thrive. Her children, now adults, had successful careers and families of their own. They often visited, filling her home with laughter, love, and the kind of warmth she had once dreamed of. Her husband, Michael, remained her greatest blessing, supportive, kind, and everything she had prayed for but never thought she would find. She had built a life far beyond what Base had ever imagined for her. Meanwhile, Base faded further into loneliness. With no wife, no stable home, and no money, Base had no choice but to return to Nigeria. His body was old, his health failing, and the charm he once used to manipulate women was gone. He reached out to old friends, but they had moved on. The men who once sat with him, laughing at his easy lifestyle, had built legacies, raised families, and secured their futures. Base had nothing but memories of the life he had wasted. In his final years, he tried one last time to reconnect with his children. He wrote letters, sending them to their workplaces. He left voicemails, begging to see them, claiming he had changed, that he had made mistakes, that he wanted to make amends. But it was too late. They had given him chances before. He had proven, time and time again, that he was incapable of love, incapable of responsibility, incapable of being the father they had needed. So, when he needed them most, they gave him what he had given them: nothing. The news of his passing came quietly. There was no grand funeral, no mourning crowd, no legacy left behind. He had lived a life taken from others, and in the end, there was no one left to give. No wife. No children. No love. No peace. Just an empty name on a forgotten grave. Rita never rejoiced in Base's downfall. She had healed long ago, long before he met his fate. She had rebuilt her life, not out of revenge, but out of survival. She lived well, and that was her greatest victory. She spent her remaining years surrounded by family, love, and everything she had once thought impossible. When she closed her eyes for the last time, she did so with no regrets. She had given her all, and in the end, she had won. Life gives back what you put into it. Base had spent his life taking, and in the end, he was left with nothing. Rita had spent her life giving, and in the end, she was surrounded by everything that truly mattered. Strength, love, Family. Peace. That was our legacy. And that is what will be remembered. The end. Support Deep Dive Africa. Explore our ebook store, payhip.com/Echoes of Africa shop. At Deep Dive Africa, we uncover Africa's untold stories, bold struggles, and rich heritage. Listen. Learn. Be inspired. Empowering conversations about freedom, identity, and Africa's future. Explore our bookstore. Find powerful reads that educate and inspire at Echoes of Africa shop. Your purchase supports our mission. Stay connected. Facebook.com/DeepDiveAfrica. X, Twitter @DeepFolktales. YouTube.com/@Deep-Dive-Africa. Join the movement. Empower the message.